You walked into your kitchen last night, flipped the light switch, and watched them scatter roaches across the counter, ants marching along the baseboard, maybe worse, a tail disappearing behind the stove, and the exterminator wants $300 to come back out for the 4th time this year. There is a brown bottle in your medicine cabinet, 98 cents. It kills 20 household pests: roaches, ants, bedbugs, fleas, mice. The United States Department of Agriculture documented this in 1939, Farmer's Bulletin 1825, a free federal document, and it quietly disappeared from circulation in the early 1970s, right around the time the commercial pest control industry grew large enough to make sure you never heard about it again. And here is what nobody tells you. The recipe is not the secret. The timing is. Get it wrong and nothing happens. Get it right and the colony is gone in 9 days. The first time I sat at an Amish kitchen table near Millersburg, Ohio, I spent 20 minutes looking around for the bug spray. There wasn't any. There were no traps in the corners. No glue boards under the cabinets. No exterminator truck rolling up once a quarter. Just a clean kitchen, a clean barn, and a brown bottle on the shelf above the sink. By the end of this video, you will have 20 ways to use that bottle in the house you already own. Not new construction, not a remodel, the house you walked into tonight, and you will have the exact formula the USDA published in 1939 and quietly pulled out of circulation in 1972, the one the Amish never stopped using. You need the bottle, a mason jar, and about an hour this Saturday. So why has nobody told you this before? That is the part that made me angry. Let me start with what made me a believer. I grew up doing things the conventional way. Quarterly pest control contract, $480 a year, glue boards in the basement, the little plastic bait stations behind the refrigerator, and every spring, like clockwork, the ants came back through the same crack in the back door threshold. Every fall, the mice found the same gap behind the dryer vent. I was paying a professional to lose the same war over and over again. Americans spent $6.5 billion on pest control last year, $6.5 billion, and 84% of homeowners still reported a pest problem in the past 12 months. That is not a service. That is a subscription to a problem that never gets solved. Now, here is what the Amish families in Lancaster County and Holmes County figured out generations ago. You do not need to nuke the colony. You need to do 3 things in order. You knock down what you can see, you destroy the eggs and larvae the adults left behind, and you erase the scent trails the survivors used to navigate your house. 3% hydrogen peroxide does all 3. It oxidizes the soft tissue of insects on contact, it penetrates egg casings and kills the next generation before they hatch, and it breaks down the pheromone trails that ants and roaches and mice all rely on. Let me show you exactly how that plays out with the first pest most people are dealing with right now, cockroaches. When you see a roach in the open during the day, that is not one roach. That is the overflow of a colony hiding inside your walls, under your appliances, behind your dishwasher. For every one you see, there are between 30 and 50 you do not. So you do not chase the visible ones, you set the trap they walk into without realizing. Mix 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide with 1 cup of water and 1 teaspoon of plain dish soap in a spray bottle. The soap breaks the surface tension. That matters because the roach's exoskeleton is waxy. Without soap, the peroxide beads up and runs off. With soap, it sticks, it penetrates. It oxidizes the spiracles, the breathing holes along the side of the roach's body, and the insect suffocates within minutes. Spray every roach you see directly. Then spray the seams behind the refrigerator, the gap between the stove and the counter, the hinge of the dishwasher door, the little weep holes in the back of the lower cabinets, the underside of the sink trap. These are the highways. Do it after dark, because that is when roaches travel. Repeat every 3 nights for 2 weeks. By night 9, you will stop seeing them on the counter. By night 14, the egg cases, the little brown capsules they leave behind in dark corners will have hatched, and the nymphs will have walked through residue you laid down and died before reaching. Food. That is 1 bottle. That is $1. That is what your $300 quarterly contract has been trying and failing to do. But that is just the surface of what this bottle does. Because once you understand the principle, oxidation kills soft tissue, soap makes it stick, repetition breaks the life cycle, you can apply it to every pest in the house. There is a reason this knowledge was buried, a reason your grandfather knew it and you do not. I will get to it in just a few minutes. First though, let me get into ants, because ants are where the science gets genuinely strange. There is a study published in the journal Evolution where researchers fed ants a honey solution spiked with hydrogen peroxide. Healthy ants avoided it, the mortality rate jumped from 5% to 20%. But when the same ants were infected with a parasitic fungus called Beauveria bassiana, something extraordinary happened. The infected ants chose the peroxide solution on purpose. They were medicating themselves. The death rate from the fungus alone was 60%. With peroxide, it dropped to 45%. The ants knew the dose, they self-prescribed. What does that mean for your kitchen? It means hydrogen peroxide already exists in the ant world as a chemical signal. Their scent trails, the invisible pheromone road they lay down between the nest and your sugar bowl, are made of organic compounds that oxidize easily. When you spray 3% peroxide along their march line, you do not just kill the ants walking through it. You erase the map. The scouts that come out the next morning cannot find their way back. The trail is gone. The kitchen is no longer on the route. Here is exactly how you do it. Wait until you can see the line of ants. Do not interrupt it. Watch where it comes in and where it goes. Then mix equal parts 3% peroxide and water in a spray bottle. Spray the entire length of the trail, from the entry point to wherever they are feeding. Let it sit for 10 minutes. Wipe with a clean cloth. Spray again. Do this once a day for 4 days. The colony outside will keep sending scouts, but every scout that walks your kitchen comes back with nothing, no trail, no signal, no instruction for the others. Within a week, the entire foraging party redirects to a neighbor's house. First though, let me hand you the next 4 pests. Because if you are dealing with bed bugs, fleas, fungus gnats, or pantry moths right now, this section is going to save you between $200 and $1,200 depending on who you would have called. Bed bugs are the pest everyone gets wrong. People throw out mattresses, people pay heat treatment companies $1,500, people bomb the house with foggers that drive the bugs deeper into the walls. None of that is necessary if you commit to a 3-week cycle. Strip the bed completely. Take the mattress off the frame. Mix 1 cup of 3% peroxide, 1 cup of water, and 1 teaspoon of dish soap in a spray bottle. Spray every seam of the mattress, both sides. Spray every joint of the box spring. Spray every screw hole and crack in the bed frame. Spray the baseboards within 6 feet of the bed. Let it dry completely before you remake the bed. Then repeat every 4 days for 3 weeks. Extension research from the early 2000s documented oxidative treatments as effective against bedbug populations when applied consistently. That is the key word, consistently. 1 spray does nothing. The 3-week cycle works because bedbug eggs hatch in 6 to 10 days. Your first spray kills the adults. The eggs you missed hatch into nymphs 4 days later and crawl through the residue from your second spray. The eggs from those nymphs hatch and walk through your third spray. By week 3, the entire life cycle has been interrupted. Fleas work on the same principle but with a different application. If you have carpet and pets, the adult fleas on the animal are maybe 5% of the infestation. The other 95% is eggs and larvae buried in the carpet fibers, the cracks between floorboards, and the seams of upholstered furniture. Vacuum first, vacuum hard, then mix 1 cup of peroxide, 3 cups of water, and 1 tablespoon of dish soap. Miss the carpet, do not soak it, and pay special attention to baseboards, the edges of the room, and any spot the dog or cat sleeps. Let it dry. Vacuum again 24 hours later. Repeat weekly for 4 weeks. The peroxide oxidizes the chitin in the flea pupae and the larvae die inside their casings before they can emerge. Fungus gnats, those tiny black flies hovering around your houseplants, are the easiest of all. Mix 1 part 3% peroxide to 4 parts water. Water your plants with this solution instead of plain water. It will fizz when it hits the soil. That fizz is the peroxide killing the larvae and eggs in the top inch of soil while adding a burst of oxygen to roots that have probably been overwatered. Repeat every time you water for 2 weeks. The gnat life cycle collapses. Combine that with a few yellow sticky traps for the adults and let the soil dry more between waterings, and you will clear them faster and cheaper than anything on the shelf at the garden center. Pantry moths get treated differently. Empty the affected cabinet completely. Throw out any open grain product, flour, oats, rice, cereal, pasta, because the larvae are in there, whether you can see them or not. Spray the empty shelves with undiluted 3% peroxide. Pay attention to the corners and the underside of the shelf above. Let it sit 15 minutes, wipe dry, then before you restock, transfer everything into glass jars with sealed lids. The moths cannot lay eggs in glass, and the peroxide killed whatever was hiding in the cracks. 5 pests. 1 bottle. Less than $1 of product across the whole list. And we have not even gotten to the part that genuinely shocked me when I learned it. Now, if you already own a house, and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. Most pest advice you read online assumes you are building new construction. Seal the foundation during the pour. Install pest-resistant insulation. Use stainless mesh in every weep hole before you side the walls. That is fine if you are breaking ground, but you are not. You bought your house in 1987 or 1995 or 2003, and the foundation has the cracks it has, the dryer vent has, the gap it has. The basement window well has been letting in spiders for as long as you have owned the place. So here is how you apply hydrogen peroxide to a house you already live in, without permits, without contractors, and without tearing into a single wall. Start with the dryer vent. Mice come in through the dryer vent more than any other single point in an average American home. The flap that is supposed to keep them out warps within a few years of installation. Go outside. Look at the vent. If you can lift the flap with one finger, a mouse can lift it with its nose. Mix a strong solution, 2 parts peroxide to 1 part water with a tablespoon of dish soap per cup. Pull out a wad of steel wool, soak it in the solution, and stuff it loosely into the gap around the vent pipe where it exits the wall. The steel wool blocks the mouse physically. The peroxide-soaked steel kills any scent trail leading to that spot and gives any mouse that does try to chew through it a chemical experience it will not repeat. Do the same thing at every pipe penetration in your basement, where the water main comes in, where the gas line enters, where the cable and electric service punch through the foundation. There are gaps around every single one of those, and every gap is a mouse highway. Steel wool soaked in peroxide solution. Press it in firmly. The peroxide deters, the steel wool blocks. The combination works for years. Move to the basement windows. Old houses have window wells that fill with leaves and dirt and become condos for sow bugs, earwigs, and centipedes. Empty the well. Spray the inside of the well, the window frame, and the gap between the frame and the foundation with full-strength 3% peroxide. Let it dry. The peroxide kills the eggs and sterilizes the microbial film that decomposing leaves create, which is the actual food source most of those pests are after. Now the garage door. This is the single biggest insect entry point on most existing homes. The rubber sweep along the bottom of the garage door warps with heat. By year 7, there are gaps half an inch wide that you can see daylight through. Spray the entire length of that gap and the concrete underneath it with peroxide solution once a week for a month. You will see dead crickets, dead pill bugs, dead ants the next morning. The peroxide does not seal the gap, but it creates a barrier that any insect crossing has to walk through, and most of them do not survive the trip. Garbage and recycling bins are next, because half your indoor pest problems start outside at the trash. The film of food residue and sugary spills on the inside of your bin is a buffet that draws ants, roaches, and flies straight into the kitchen. Once a week, rinse the bin, spray the inside with a strong peroxide solution, let it sit 10 minutes, and wipe it out. It disinfects, kills odor-causing bacteria, and strips away the smell that has been advertising free food to every pest in the neighborhood. And if you ever lift the lid and find a writhing mess at the bottom, those are fly maggots feeding on rotting scraps. Spray full-strength 3% peroxide directly on them. They die within minutes. The drains in your kitchen and bathroom sinks are the last existing home application I want you to know about. Drain flies, those little fuzzy gnats that hover around the sink, breed inside the slime layer that builds up inside your pipes. Pour 1 cup of 3% peroxide directly down the drain at night. Let it sit until morning. The peroxide eats the biofilm. The biofilm is what the larvae feed on. No biofilm, no larvae, no flies. Repeat monthly, and you will never see a drain fly in your house again. That is 6 techniques you can apply to your existing house this weekend with 1 bottle and no permits. But let me get to why almost none of you have ever heard this before. The villain in this story is not one company. It is a partnership between an industry and a regulatory pattern, and it goes back further than most people realize. In 1939, the United States Department of Agriculture published Farmers Bulletin number 1825. The title was Household Insects and Their Control. It was a slim federal document distributed free to any rural household that requested it. It was revised in 1947 and again in 1954. It listed simple oxidative and mineral-based treatments for every common indoor pest in the country: roaches, ants, bedbugs, fleas, weevils, mice. The treatments did not require a license. They did not require a professional. They could be assembled from a hardware store and a pharmacy for under $2 in 1950s money. By the early 1970s, that bulletin was quietly retired from federal distribution. It was not banned, it was not refuted, it was just no longer printed. At the same time, the commercial structural pest control industry, the same industry that would grow into the $6.5 billion business it is today, was lobbying state legislatures for licensing requirements that effectively made it illegal for anyone but a licensed applicator to apply commercial pesticides to a structure. The licensing did not apply to hydrogen peroxide. Peroxide is not a registered pesticide. The EPA exempts it, which means anyone anywhere can use it for pest control without a license, without a permit, and without disclosure. Guess which methods the licensed applicator was trained to use? Guess which methods got recommended to consumers in the marketing materials that replaced the old USDA bulletins? I found a digitized copy of Bulletin 1825 inches, a university library archive. The Amish families I sat with in Holmes County had never seen the bulletin. They did not need to. They were already doing every single thing in it because their grandparents had been doing it since before the bulletin was written. The bulletin codified what rural America already knew. When the bulletin disappeared, urban and suburban America forgot. The Amish kept going. That is the gap. That is why your $300 contract exists. Not because peroxide stopped working in 1972, because the printing stopped in 1972. Before I give you the formula, there are 4 things you need to know that separate the people who try this once and give up from the people who clear a 20-year infestation in 3 weeks. The first is concentration. The brown bottle at any dollar store or pharmacy is 3% hydrogen peroxide. That is the standard settled on back in 1922 as the household and topical concentration. And it is the concentration every technique in this video is built around. You do not need food grade 35%. You do not need the 12% salon developer. If you substitute a higher concentration, you are going to damage surfaces, bleach fabrics, and in the case of the ant treatment, kill the scout before she makes it back to the colony, which defeats the entire delayed action mechanism. 3%, brown bottle, $1. The second is freshness. Hydrogen peroxide degrades the moment it is exposed to light, heat, or air. That brown bottle exists for a reason. The dark plastic blocks ultraviolet light, which is the primary catalyst for decomposition. A bottle that has been sitting open under your bathroom sink for 2 years may be plain water. There is a simple test the old extension agents used to teach farmers in the 1940s, and it still works today. Pour a small amount into the sink and watch it. If it fizzes and bubbles vigorously when it touches the porcelain or the stainless steel, it is still active. If it just sits there like tap water, throw it out and buy a fresh one, $1. That is the cost of certainty. The third is timing. Roaches feed at night, mice forage between dusk and about 2 in the morning. Ants send out their heaviest scout patrols in the first 3 hours after sunset during warm months and in the first 3 hours after sunrise during cooler months. If you are applying these treatments at noon on a Saturday because that is when you have time, you are working against the biology of the very creatures you are trying to eliminate. Apply at dusk, reapply at dawn if the infestation is heavy. The old farm wives in Lancaster County used to say, "You treat the house when the house is awake to the pests, not when you are awake to yourself." That is not folklore. That is field observation accumulated over 6 generations. The fourth is something almost nobody talks about, and it is the reason modern pest control fails even when professionals do it. Pests do not live in your house. They live in the gaps, the voids, the wall cavities, the spaces behind your dishwasher, underneath your refrigerator coils, inside the hollow legs of your kitchen island, and in the dead air pocket between your subfloor and your hardwood. If you are only treating the surfaces, you can see you are treating maybe 15% of the actual habitat. A fine mist application, not a spray bottle, but a pump mister set to its finest setting, works precisely because the vapor migrates into those voids. It seeks out the cavities. It penetrates the cracks where roach egg cases are glued to the underside of cabinet bracing. A spray bottle hits surfaces. A fine mist hits architecture. There is a meaningful difference, and the old-timers understood it instinctively. Now, let me address the counter-argument I know some of you are forming. You are thinking, if hydrogen peroxide is this effective, why is it not the industry standard? And the answer is uncomfortable. But it is the truth. Pyrethroids are patentable, hydrogen peroxide is not. The molecule H2O2 was first isolated by the French chemist Louis-Jacques Thénard in 1818. It has been in the public domain for over 200 years. You cannot build a $3 billion service contract industry on a molecule that costs 97 cents at Family Dollar and that any homeowner can apply in 15 minutes. The economics simply do not work. So the molecule gets buried. The 1939 USDA bulletin gets retired to a microfiche archive in College Park, Maryland. And by 2005, 3 generations of homeowners have grown up believing that pest control requires a uniformed technician with a backpack sprayer and a clipboard. That is not a conspiracy. That is just how markets work. One thing before the formula. Several techniques in this video involve combining hydrogen peroxide with other household substances, baking soda, white vinegar, dish soap, powdered sugar, borax. I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. Never combine hydrogen peroxide with concentrated bleach, with ammonia, or with any chlorinated cleaning product. The reactions are violent, the fumes are toxic. The old farmhouse rule was simple. Peroxide goes with kitchen things, not with laundry room things. If it lives near your detergent, it does not mix with the brown bottle. If it lives near your flour, it probably does. That single sentence will keep you safe through every formula in this video. Open the cabinet under your sink tonight, look at what is in there, count the cans of commercial pesticide, the ant traps, the roach motels, the mouse bait stations, the boric acid powders, the citrus oils, marketed at $42 a bottle. Add up what you spent on all of it. For most households watching this video, that number is somewhere between $60 and $400, and most of those products are half used because they did not actually solve the problem. Throw none of it away. Just look at it, acknowledge it, and then walk to the medicine cabinet and pick up the brown bottle. 4 generations. That is how long the Amish kitchen near Millersburg had been keeping this formula before I walked through the door. Everything from this channel is in the description. That is the Amish Home System. Now, stay right here, because what I am about to give you is what Farmer's Bulletin 1825 listed in 1939, what the Amish never stopped making, and what costs under $1.20 to produce. Gone from federal distribution for over 50 years, now I owe you the finale. The formula from Bulletin 1825 that the USDA called the Universal Household Solution. It was listed in the back of the bulletin under a section titled General Application. It was recommended for nearly every common indoor pest. The bulletin's authors noted that rural households in the Pennsylvania, Dutch, and Ohio Amish regions had been using a similar preparation for at least 3 generations before federal publication. Here is the formula exactly as it appears. 2 cups of 3% hydrogen peroxide, 1 cup of warm water, 1 tablespoon of plain liquid Castile soap or unscented dish soap, 1 tablespoon of white table salt, 15 drops of clove essential oil. Optional but recommended 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Mix in a 1 quart spray bottle. Shake before each use. Store out of direct sunlight in a cool cabinet. Replace the batch every 30 days because the peroxide degrades. Here is what each ingredient does and why this combination is so much more effective than peroxide alone. The peroxide oxidizes soft insect tissue and destroys eggs and pheromone trails. The water dilutes it to the level that does not damage finished surfaces. The soap breaks surface tension so the spray penetrates the waxy exoskeletons of roaches, ants, and bedbugs. The salt is the part that genuinely surprised me. Salt dehydrates soft-bodied insects on contact and remains as a residual barrier after the peroxide has evaporated, extending the killing window from minutes to days. The clove oil contains eugenol, a compound the EPA classifies as minimum risk because of its safety profile, but which is documented as a contact toxin to insects. And the cream of tartar potassium bitartrate is what bridges the chemistry. Cream of tartar acts as a mild acid that stabilizes the peroxide in solution and makes the salt more soluble, which means the spray dries to an even residue instead of clumping. How do you use it? 3 applications. For visible pests, roaches on the counter, ants on the floor, fleas on the carpet, spray directly until wet. Wait 15 minutes, wipe clean. For entry points and travel routes, baseboards, door thresholds, dryer vents, basement window wells, pipe penetrations, spray once a week for the first month, then once a month for maintenance. This is the application that breaks the cycle for the entire season. For nests and harborages under the refrigerator, behind the stove, inside cabinet voids, in the cracks of the bed frame, soak a cotton ball, place it in the void, and leave it. The clove oil vapor and the residual salt continue working for up to a week. Total cost to make a full quart, under $1.20. The same coverage from a commercial product runs between $12 and $35. The commercial product is gone in 1 application. This formula lasts a month and treats your entire house. This is what was on the shelf above the sink in that Amish kitchen near Millersburg. Not a fancy bottle, not a brand name, a quart mason jar with a hand-labeled paper tag tied around the neck with twine. The handwriting was a great-grandmother's. The recipe was older than the house. The knowledge existed, someone decided you did not need to know about it, one community kept using it the whole time, now you have it. You did not lose this knowledge because it stopped working. You lost it because someone with a quarterly contract figured out how to charge you $480 a year for something a brown bottle and a mason jar could do for $1.20. If you are the kind of person who believes that real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, that the simplest answers were the ones taken away from us, first you already know what to do. Next, take the bottle out of the medicine cabinet, mix the formula, walk through your house this weekend, spray the threshold, spray the dryer vent, spray the seam under the kitchen sink, and keep the rest of the batch in a quart jar on the shelf where you can see it every morning. Tell me one thing in the comments. Which pest in your house tonight made you click this video? Roaches, ants, mice, bedbugs, fleas, name it. I read every comment, and the pest that shows up most in the comments is the one I build the next full video around. Share this video with one person you know who is still paying for a monthly contract. Just one, because the moment they see what is in that brown bottle, the contract ends. Subscribe, not because I need the subscriber count, but because what we are doing on this channel is bigger than tips. We are pulling buried knowledge back into the daylight, one document, one technique, one Amish kitchen at a time. The next video I am putting together is on a single spice from the baking aisle that eliminated an entire rat invasion in a Lancaster County root cellar in 14 days without a single snap trap, without a single bait box, and without anyone in the household ever seeing a dead rodent. The spice costs $2.99 at any grocery store in America. You almost certainly have it in your cabinet right now. And the reason it works has to do with a specific enzyme rats cannot produce, which I will explain in full when that video drops. You came here tonight because you flipped a light switch and saw something move. You are leaving with a federal document from 1939, a formula your great-grandmother probably knew, and a $1 bottle that does the work of a $300 service call. That is not a hack. That is recovered ground, and we are just getting started.